Welcome to the Big Picture Festival 2020. Thank you for joining us. I'm Emily from Live and Local, and I'm really excited to be here with the wonderful Kenny Glenaan for this discussion. Kenny's film Dirt Road to Lafayette is available as part of this year's Big Picture Festival. The film shows the journey of teenager Murdo and his father Tom as they visit American Scots relatives after the death of Murdo's mother. It's here that he meets accordion player Queen Monzier, who invites him to play a gig with her. Kenny Glenaan is an award-winning television and film director. His work includes BAFTA-winning film Summer, Locarno Film Festival winner Yasmin, and IFTA-nominated thriller Acceptable Risk. He is currently prepping a feature-length BBC documentary on the author James Kalman. Kenny, thank you so much for being here with us. How are you?
I'm okay. Thank you very much for screening the film and for talking about it. Thank you.
Brilliant. For those who haven't seen the film yet, how would you describe it? Obviously, without giving away any spoilers.
Well, it's got lots of music in it. It's a kind of road movie where a father and son come from Scotland to visit their American-Scots relations, and a few mishaps and ups and downs along the way. So it's, I suppose, in a way, it's a kind of road trip musical coming of age story. Really, at its heart, it's about the brevity of life, the confines of family, and the lure of the open road. Really.
Fabulous, thank you. And the film is based on the novel by Booker Prize winning author James Kalman. And what initially drew you to his work?
Well, I've known Jim for many years. I directed a play that he had written way back before he won the Booker Prize. And I directed a radio play for Radio 3 that Jim had written also. And this came about, a lot of people think this came from the novel Dirt Road to Lafayette, but it was the other way around. The screenplay was written first, and out of the screenplay, Jim wrote the novel. I think partly as a kind of insurance against the film never ever getting made, never having enough money to get it going, or big names in it or whatever. So he wrote a novel version, which he thought, well, at least that will get out there. So it started with an idea. Years ago, I had worked with a musician in the theatre in Edinburgh, and he was a blues musician, plays in pub bands in Edinburgh. And his dad was a lay preacher. And when he was young, his dad used to take him on reciprocal visits to the deep south in America. And that was where he first heard blues music. So I was telling Jim about this story, and that was the start, that was the kind of spark that started us talking about, well, what could this be? And what's important, and what's the relationships, and it just kind of spiraled out from there. Really.
Oh, fantastic. So it actually grew from conversations you had together, and then the screenplay, and then he, of course, with his very distinct voice and style, wrote the novel. Fabulous.
Exactly.
Brilliant. As you've touched on it already, the importance of music is a really key theme in Dirt Road to Lafayette, and particularly the Zydeco music. Can you tell our viewers a bit more about that genre? And then as a second part of that question, I was just curious what impact music has had on your life personally.
Right, well, brilliant questions.
Thank you.
The music in the film, it starts off Scottish, it becomes Scots-Irish, it becomes Scots-Irish-French, and then it takes in bluegrass and blues, and then moves into Zydeco, and then moves into Cajunto, which is an accordion music coming up from Mexico. So if you can imagine, way back, 200 years ago and the immigration from Europe to America, and the music was carried from Scotland and Europe, or German accordion, oompa music, and Scottish accordion, and French Cape Breton accordion. So you've got Scots, Irish, then you land in Nova Scotia, you've got the French influence in there, which kind of colours the music. Then if you follow the trajectory down as people kind of colonized America and moved across America, it's a kind of recolonization of America from a musician's point of view, really. So you'd have bluegrass out of Kentucky, around that area, moving down into Alabama, Louisiana, to the Acadian, the French Acadian region there, where you get a mixture of Zydeco blues, and then across to where America borders Mexico, and you get the kind of Spanish influence coming up from there. So it's a big, mad mixture of all those different styles. And Zydeco is a kind of two-step dance music, and it's like a newspaper, is the way I describe it. It's a historical newspaper in musical form. And it's really representative of kind of that minority culture of the Acadiana region, which is very French, very proud French there. And of course, you've got lots of kind of interesting Scots influences coming up through New Orleans, which is the mouth of the Mississippi. And you got a lot of music, coming in through the port, travelling up through there. I found a place in New Orleans actually called Little Scotland.
Oh, brilliant.
And a pub called the Blue Bonnet, and a radio station that played lots of Scots music. So there's so many crossovers and links and colours and twists, and so. That's
brilliant. That was really vivid. Thank you. And how did you come across Zydeco music?
I had never heard of Zydeco music at all. I was quite interested in Americana music and Tex-Mex and country and all the more kind of obvious ones. But Jim had taught creative writing at Austin University, I think, Texas, and he travelled a lot around the South, and he ended up in Lafayette at one point. And there's a big free music festival there every year in April, which lasts about 4 days. So as we were constructing the story, I thought, I'm going to go to America and I'm going to travel the journey that the characters do and just get a sense of it down through Mississippi and follow the river and all that stuff. And I ended up at the music festival in Lafayette. And I was speaking to some people and they said, oh, you have to talk to Duck Powell. He's done music for a few films and he would be a good guy. He's a fiddler out of Kentucky who married a lady from Louisiana, from down around Lafayette. And so I went to see him play. He had a band called Balfa Tashures, Balfa, B-A-L-F-A. Balfa, from the Scottish surname Balfour, B-A-L-F-O-U-R. So it's interesting, just the journey of words and all of that's languages. So I watched the concert and then I jumped over the fence at the end and I went round the back and I said to him, Mr. Powell, you don't know me from Adam, but I have a movie script and it's got 2 songs written by your father-in-law in 1955 in them. And he went, what? So he took a look at it and he became involved in the music. So that gave us access to some of the most incredible musicians, traditional American musicians around, like Flaco Jimenez. I don't know how many Grammys are involved in the music in the film, but there's a lot of them. Flaco Jimenez is like the kind of best conjunto player in the world ever. Dirk Powell, he plays with Joan Baez. He plays a lot with just tons of great, fantastic, incredible musicians. And in the middle of that, we had to find a young Scottish boy who could play the accordion. So we found a young fella from Stirling who'd never acted before. And when we were recording the music in it was just like a fairy tale. It was like a studio on the edge of the bayou, as you would imagine, with all the trees overhanging and crocodiles in the water. And we took him out of school in Stirling, flew him to New Orleans, drove him to the bayou, put him in a studio with all these fantastic musicians who all went, "Oh, hey, how you doing, mate?" And, really accepted him. And they just got stuck into the music and shared everything between them, recorded all the music for the movie in 2 days, and then just kind of jammed like mad at night. And then we sent him home for 6 weeks, back to school in Stirling.
Oh, what a calm down.
Yeah, I know. Before he came out to do the movie, Oh. And then he came back out and,
wow. Yeah. What a fantastic opportunity, though. Brilliant. Because from looking at some of your previous pieces, you've worked with actually quite a huge array of actors in your time. I noticed Helena Bonham Carter was in there. And that, of course, in this film, you've got David O'Hara and Margot Mora, who are quite experienced. But you've mentioned, Neil Sutcliffe, who plays Murdo. How was it working with people who are maybe more used to performing as musicians rather than actors?
Well, again, it's a lovely question. And so the cast was a mixture of very, very experienced musicians who would do a little bit of acting, and very experienced actors who would do a little bit of musicianship. Some non-actors, some people we picked up along the way. So it was a kind of mad mixture. It's like a gumbo, it's a big soup full of all these different influences, and throw them all together and all these ingredients and put it on the stove and see what happens.
There's some beautiful metaphors coming out of this discussion. I love it. Because, you've just said again about the variety of actors. You said about the different types of music and the journeys it's been on. And there is a really wonderful bringing together of cultures within this film. How did you find the experience of filming in Louisiana and being immersed in those different cultures?
Yeah, I loved it. I just found America just such a fascinating country. It's just a living debate happening before your very eyes, and it's so vast. And I found it really interesting that, I went to church a couple of times because I was just interested in seeing how people got on and worshipped, and how religion is a big theme in the story. And so what fascinated me is you could go to a Presbyterian church which was all white people on one side of the freeway, and it was kind of Lutheran, like kind of get down on your knees and feel the cold stone type worship. And you go 4 miles up the road and you jump on the other side of the freeway and you go to an African-American church which had like 2 sets of drums, 6 saxophones, an electric guitar and a choir, and they're both worshipping the same God, but it's just completely different ways of doing it. And I just loved that clash of how all those kind of cultures rub together or don't rub together. It was very, very stimulating. And I thought, oh, well, America will be easy to film in because everyone speaks English, but it's just a completely different country. They might as well be speaking in some other language, because it's just not. We do things differently here to how they do it there, and that was interesting, just in a practical sense of how you do that. But I loved it. It's very, very stimulating, really. And I ended up in some kind of mad places. I met a lawyer and his family who were living in a tent in a campsite. He had lost his job, lost his house, and they were living in a tent. He was operating his business from a tent in Mississippi, and it was the extremes in America were fascinating. You know, it's all about opposites. You're either really rich or you're really poor, and I met people who had rickets, and I thought, God, surely that went out in Victorian times, and people living in shacks, whole towns, like shanty shacks, like you would get in Soweto or something. And it was just extraordinary. From that to incredible wealth, and it was brilliant. I loved it.
It just sounded like an amazing life experience, really. So thank you for sharing your memories of it with us. That's beautiful. I love the image that you gave us of the two churches, and how you say, worshipping the same God but in a different way. I think we can take a lot from that in life, that we're all sort of here for the same reason, but we're all a bit different. And as well as working, with a lot of different actors, I noticed you've worked across a wide range of genres as well. So how do you deal with the different dynamics between directing, say, a full-length feature film compared with, soap operas or detective dramas?
I suppose that a soap opera or like a mainstream television drama or something, it's a specific kind of genre, and it's probably created before you get involved as a director, and the budget is there, it's been greenlit, and you're brought in to direct it, and you're given a schedule, and you have to hit the schedule, and you have to do it as inventively as you can in the time available. Doing the feature film is slightly different because it's more a bespoke project, and I always try and pick a project that of an area that I don't really know, so that you kind of learn something. So like that, you mentioned Helena Bonham Carter. That was a single television film, and it was about autism. It was about a family with autism, and I knew nothing about autism at all. And that was just a fascinating journey into it and into that landscape, and to learn and just see what it's like. And of course, the whole kind of music film was just that's that whole immigration of Scottish people towards America in terms of freedom and independence and the right to worship in a certain way. And so all of that was kind of contained in this film. So it felt very, really interesting to me to get your teeth into. And it's ongoing. It just keeps turning in itself, and keeps, the more you read, then that takes you on to another book, and takes you on to something else and something else and something else. Yeah.
So it's just about keep finding those new bits of inspiration and sort of jumping into the next project, really.
Yeah.
Because the main character in Lafayette, the Dirt Road to Lafayette, of course, he has to take a risk, doesn't he? Really. Do you think can you relate to that then, working as a creative person?
What's interesting for Murdo in the story is, he lives with his dad in the west of Scotland. They live in a house. They don't live in a home. It's two men living together. The mother has passed away, and so has his sister. So it's just two guys, and it's just rubbish. And it's not that the dad's a bad person or he's violent or none of those cliches. It's just music has left them. And Murdo hasn't played music since his mum died. She was the one who probably got him lessons for his accordion and all that stuff. And they go to America at the invitation of their American-Scots relations. And Murdo wanders off and comes across this old grandmother sitting in her back garden playing an accordion. And he's an accordion player, so he immediately picks up on the music. And she picks up on him standing at the side of the garden listening. So they get together and they start trading tunes. And she invites him. She says, if you're around, I'm doing a gig in Lafayette in a few weeks' time. Maybe you want to come along and play with us. And he's thinking, oh my God, it's fantastic. And of course, his dad turns up, we've missed the bus, where have you been? Blah, 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 blah. And, his dad's just, I suppose, is living in his own grief and can't move beyond it. And the harder he tries to make contact with his son, the further his son goes away from him. And the harder his dad tries, the further his son goes towards music and art and liberation and independence and freedom of thought and instinct and following your nose and all of that stuff,
Fantastic. I'm glad you mentioned the bus as well, because of course we've put the trailer up for people to see, and my absolute favourite line in the trailer was where they ask him where he's come from, and he says the bus station.
That's right.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
And you've just touched on this. You've said that they start off in a house with two males, and it considers really how these two male protagonists deals with a huge period of loss in their lives. They've had a lot of grief, lot to grieve. There's an increasing awareness, of course, as you'll know, towards the need for men in particular to talk more about their emotions and their feelings. So from a director's point of view, how did you approach that topic, and how important was it for you to get it right?
Well, I think it's really hard to it's hard to investigate and to animate that type of story, because it is unspoken, unsaid, and it's buried very deep. Like the dad is just in stasis in this story. He can't get out of it. He's sinking in quicksand is a good way to kind of describe him. And his life has come for his son, and the dad I think he's lost his wife, so he feels a failure. He's never done anything wrong in his life, and he's lost his wife young. So he's angry about that. He's angry at God, because why has this been kind of visited on him? But he's failed as a husband and as a parent. And then he's lost his daughter. Both of them he's lost. So and now his son is kind of champing at the bit because he's so curious about everything, and he's like water. He keeps going wherever it'll go, and there's a kind of recurring motif in the film is he keeps walking away from his dad. Even if it's just over there to the shops, or a bit further the next time, or a bit further again, and then eventually he gets on the bus. His dad won't move, so. What do? You feel a responsibility to your dad, but he just steps beyond his dad. And of course, that forces his dad out of his shell because he's panicking for his son. So they're both heading for Lafayette, and they get there, and there's a big gig. Queen Monzie is playing a massive gig. It's a pub gig, but she's so well respected as a musician that there's various people there to see her because they just know this is where it's at. And all the music is played for real in the film. And the culmination is this song called, it's a Beau Jocques song called I'm on the Wonder, and it's a boy wondering about his mum, and I mean it's a tremendous piece of music. And the young fella Neil, when we recorded the music, him and the other guy that were playing on the accordions, they did a solo for about 19 minutes. They just went off on one with two dueling accordions. And of course, we couldn't use 90 minutes in the film, but I think it's something like a 4-minute solo or something. But it's all his. It's all for real. And he plays his accordion like an electric guitar. And that's what they're like in Louisiana. They're gunslingers, it's not like traditional Scottish kind of play your accordion with your shirt and tie and all buttoned up. It's they're accordions, they spin them, and they pull them out, push them in. It's quite something, It's music to dance to, whereas in Scotland we kind of, you don't dance. There's a great old joke in Scotland. What was it about the why do the Presbyterians not sing? And it's because they're scared that it'll make them dance, And so in a way, Murdo's getting away from all that stuff, and hopefully at the end of the film, for the dad, Murdo gets an opportunity to go off and play with a band. It's a young group of Mexican musicians who are doing the border, where Donald Trump wants to build a wall. They're jumping backwards and forwards across the border, playing gigs, drinking, meeting girls, having a great time. Wow, with all the music. And they hear Murdo and they go, geez, man, we're looking for somebody to play an accordion. Come and join us. So off he goes in a van at the end of the film. And his dad is, oh my Jesus, God, where are you going? You could get murdered. But I think hopefully his dad is left at a crossroads at the end of the film where you think, well, it might be the beginning of the start of the rest of his life too, if he's brave enough to re-enter life. It's kind of safer for him to sit and look at the fire and not go out, because then he won't fail.
Is that your hope for him at the end of the film?
Yeah, I hope so. But he's, it's interesting. Jim's such a clever writer. Tom is, what's in a name? The name Tom. And there's all those associations with the name Tom. Poor Tom, Tom Thumb, Tommy. All those kind of ways of describing kind of a Tom. And he's like that. He's kind of really, he's tried to do everything right, and nothing has worked for him. And now his son keeps walking away from him, and he's terrified. And into that, they go to America, to their American-Scots relations, who are more Scottish than them, like kind of Braveheart faces painted and kilts. And, Murdo and Tom have never wore a kilt. They go to America and people keep, like, where do you buy your sporns type idea. You go, what?
That's brilliant. It's so lovely to hear you speak so passionately about the characters as well. Do they stay with you for a while after, you've had this experience with the film? Do the characters stay there?
Well, hopefully they do for people, because I kind of made the film, and we made it for little or no money. It was just, we ran out in our budget. We ran out of money on a budget that was non-existent in the first place. It was that kind of film, and so it was. I'll tell you a funny story. This is how mad it was in terms of making a film with no money. We turned up at this location, this dance hall, where Etta James had played many years before. Somebody told me a story. She used to hide her cocaine behind a brick in the wall. He says, "There's the brick. Take the brick out. That's where she put her cocaine." So anyway, there was a ghost of all these people, Ray Charles and all that. Anyway, we had organised to film there. The chap who owned the dance hall didn't turn up to let us in. So we thought, how are we going to get in? And the cameraman kept saying to me, "Oh my God, we've got to get in or else I won't have time to light it." So we went to the van and we got a crowbar and we broke off the lock. Now, you take your life in your hands in America when you do something to someone's property, because they're so litigious. Anyway, we broke the lock open, we got in, turned all the lights on, got all the lights set up, started filming, and then the electricity cut off. The guy hadn't paid the electricity bill. And we had all these musicians and dancers and everybody there. So, well, bloody hell. So we had to send someone to the town hall to pay the electricity bill to get the power back on to try and get the film finished. And then one night we were filming outside the back of the club, and it was, a real industrial part of the town, and just bordering the railway line. And do you know that saying, "Oh, he comes from the other side of the tracks"? Well, this is where it comes from, because usually the railway line would go right through the middle of the town, and they'd build the town on each side of it. And there was a kind of a posh side and a poor side. And of course, on the poor side was the African American quarter, even to this day. So we were filming at 2:00 in the morning, and the clubs in town had all closed, and suddenly it became really busy. It was like Oxford Street at Christmas or something. And suddenly there's cars and people walking and, shouting, and they were drunk and they're all walking back home. And then someone pulled a gun and started shooting. An argument came up at the end of the street, and they started shooting. And of course, all the American crew, you know how in the front of Life magazine, where you see those incidents when someone gets assassinated and they catch the moment just when people have turned and they look or whatever, that's exactly what it was like. And all the American crew dived under cars, and of course me and Tony, the cameraman, who are from, he's from Manchester and I'm from Glasgow, and we were standing in the middle of the road going, "God, is that gunshots?" And the Americans were going, "Get down, get down, get under the car." Jeez, it was mad. It was just mad, but interesting, all the crew had guns in their wagons. There was a really nice woman who was the script supervisor, and she could take an M16 apart in like a minute 20 seconds.
Quite a skill.
Yeah. Everybody, all those images that you don't see here, like you could see someone coming out with a bag of shopping here and a rifle, and you think, is that gun loaded? What has he just done with that gun, or where is he going now? But it's just like second nature to them. It was a fascinating place. I loved it, and all its contradictions.
So it may have had a very little budget, and it may be quite different from some of the mainstream TV stuff you've done, but it sounds like you had an absolute blast. Sounds fantastic.
I got a few grey hairs along the way.
That's what life's about, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's, I don't really want to mention the C word, but it's been a bit of a difficult time in the creative industry at the moment, because of COVID. How has your practice changed?
Well, the industry has been devastated, and a lot of people are not working. There's some stuff happening, but they reckon it will be the spring before people get back and get going. Everybody hopefully. And in the jobs that are going, then there's lots of, physical COVID restrictions, and filming is incredibly difficult when you have all those restrictions. It's very hard to stay 2 meters away from people. When you call action, the actors do their stuff, you call cut, and then everybody goes in to adjust what they need to adjust. But you can't do that at the same speed now, because one person has to go in, they have to come out, then the next person has to go in, and everybody has to try and stay 2 meters apart, which in principle is noble, but in practice it's very hard. If you're in a corridor 1.5 meters wide, what do? Do you go out and go round and go out and go round? And how long does that take? And all of that stuff. I think it's really difficult. And my heart goes out to people in the theatre. Someone was telling me that a stage manager who worked at a theatre in London, they went into the theatre just to double check it, make sure there was no leaks and all that stuff. And all the rats had been in the theatre and taking lumps out of all the chairs.
Oh no.
So they just thought, oh my God, So it's going to be, I think it's a lean time for a lot of people. It's incredibly difficult. And you would like to think that the government would support all those people who work in that self-employed capacity. I think there'll be interesting stuff to come out of this. I think it will provoke very, very interesting creative responses. I know Channel 4 are already doing something about care homes, so that'll be very, very interesting as we start to analyse ourselves and see, what happened and why and all that stuff.
Absolutely, and like you, I hope that the arts will play an important part in that. That'd be good to see. Final question, if that's okay. Just, it'd be great to hear what other stuff you're working on at the moment, what you've got coming up that our viewers might want to look out for, especially if they enjoy your film, Dirt Road to Lafayette.
Okay, well, I'm not doing anything. I'm unemployed. I need a job. Give me a job.
Okay, well, this can be your chance to, if anyone's watching.
I'm making a documentary about James Kelman for the BBC, which is really all about his background and his family and all that stuff, and his own journey to America and back, and including the Booker Prize and all that stuff. I along with my friend, I've written a script, a feature film script, which I hope to make in the summer, which is set up around the nuclear submarine bases in Scotland, Faslane and Coulport. It's not really about the bases, but it's about the people who live and work in the shadow of the bases and the kind of culture specific to those that climate, where the base is the only employer. And so that's what I'm up to. But yeah, it'd be good to get back in the director's chair sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I think we're all hoping that we'll be able to be back soon. But then it has provided other opportunities, because we would usually be in Warwick doing this, and maybe we wouldn't have been able to sit here today and have this conversation from very different places. Yeah,
no, it's fantastic. Thank you very much for screening the film, and to everybody who's going to come along and watch it. It's a real voyage of discovery and adventure and all that stuff. And I really hope you enjoy the music, because it's fantastic music.
I have no doubt they will. It's going to be fantastic for people to see your film over the weekend. And also, I have thoroughly enjoyed our chat today. It's been wonderful. Thank you so much for being part of the festival. It's really been a pleasure to have you with us. And of course, Dirt Road to Lafayette is available to view now as part of the Big Picture Festival. It's included in the ticket price, but you do need to email us on the link below, selena@liveandlocal.org.uk, so that you can get your code to watch it.